Father God, we are richly blessed and highly favored. We live in the greatest state in the United States and the greatest country in the world, and we are richly blessed. We ask for your guidance and your mercy. We ask that you help us to conduct the business of the people of Georgia in a way that would be pleasing to you. Bless us now and give us open ears and attentive thoughts. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Senator Burns. Before we get started, I want to say thank you to Megan and Ella. Thank you. Where's Megan? Thank you. This is her first time to do a committee meeting. She's done a great job. So let's give her a little round of applause. And Ella, thank you. Now we want to, first thing we need to do is take care of the business of adopting the rules. If you'll look in the back of your folder, we've got the rules. It's the same rules from last year. No changes at all. And most of you were on this committee. All right, we got a motion to approve. We got a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, the rules passed. Now we're going to hear from the Lieutenant Governor's floor leader, the Chief Deputy Whip, and the Chairman of Transportation. I don't know how many more titles the guy can have, but we're going to hear from Senator Dolezal. Now, I think what we want to do is just probably take the SB 28 and table that. I know you're working on a committee sub. If you explain that to us, what you're doing on that, we'll come back next week or 2 weeks from now, whenever that committee sub. But we do want to talk about SB 38 and SR 52, hearing only discussion. And I think we have some folks in the audience that want to talk about that bill and that resolution. So, Senator Dolezal, Chief Deputy Whip, please come up to the mic.
Mr. Chairman, this is my 7th year in the General Assembly, and I've yet to have a bill before one of your illustrious committees, and so it is a great honor to go through what I know will be a thorough vetting process and perfecting this a very important piece of legislation under your leadership. So thank you for the great work that you have done. We are going to bring a committee sub for the red tape rollback bill that Lieutenant Governor's office and myself are still working on perfecting. We have a couple of changes that we're going to make to that, so we'll be more than happy to bring that back to you at what I hope will be another 8 a.m. meeting, one of your legendary 8 a.m. meetings, Mr. Chairman. Why we're doing that on day 12, I have no idea, but here we are. So I would, if it's okay, like to talk about Senate Bill 38.
Well, you get up early, don't you? Don't you work out in the morning?
You know, Mr. Chairman, money never sleeps.
Money never sleeps. Okay, easy money.
All
Go
right.
ahead. Let's talk about SB 38, development impact fees.
Yeah, so this is the same bill the Senate passed out last year, 49-2. And as we talked about last year, Georgia in 1990 passed the Development Impact Fee Act. And it was the recognition that when it comes to infrastructure, you have really two choices of how you can pay for infrastructure expansion. You can tax existing homeowners, or you can allow new development to pay their pro rata share of the cost of the infrastructure that they are creating the burden for. So the way that the development impact fee works is very interesting to me. You know, when we think about the way the government funds its activities, in my opinion, the most fair way that you can do that is with usage fees. And usage fees tie directly the cost of something to the people that are benefiting from it. So here's the way the development impact fee works currently in Georgia, and what we're proposing in this bill is to roll school impact fees into the Development Impact Fee Act. Under the Development Impact Fee Act, you can levy at the choice of local municipality impact fees for roads, parks and rec, 911, libraries, and other emergency services. You cannot do that for schools, which in fast-growing counties, the largest portion of infrastructure expense is to go build a $80-100 million high school, and it's something that is 100% driven by new development. But here's where this gets really interesting. In order to levy an impact fee, you have to form a development impact fee committee at the local level. That committee needs to be made up by statute of at least 50% people from the development industry. They must, by statute, calculate what new development's pro rata share is of the infrastructure expense. Let's talk about roads, for example. They would take the existing level of service on a road. They would calculate the amount of expense to maintain that existing level of service. They would then say this is the pro rata share of new development's cost to expand that road, and that is the max that you can charge. You can charge less than that if you'd like to, but that's the max that you can charge. They also develop service areas in that process. Those impact fees must be used for the purpose they were collected. They must be used in the service area from which they were collected. And if they are not used within a certain period of time, 7 years, they must be returned to the taxpayer. So it is quite literally, in my opinion, probably the most fair form of revenue generation that we have. What we're doing in Senate Bill 38 is we are defining high-growth school systems, and we are allowing impact fees only to be charged in high-growth school systems. And Mr. Chairman, you will see that on line 41 through 45. There are two triggers for what determines a high-growth school system. The first trigger is 20% growth or more during the immediately preceding 10-year period, as well as, this is an and, total expenditures of $250 or more for the construction of new educational facilities. There is currently one county in the state of Georgia that would qualify as a high-growth school system, and that's Forsyth County. And what we've seen in Forsyth County is we have seen hundreds of millions of either bond debt that has been placed on the existing homeowners to construct new facilities, or what has happened most recently, and this gets to House Bill 581 a little bit, they have actually been holding cash reserves and then paying cash for these new buildings. So quite literally, it is coming 100% on the backs of the existing homeowners to fund the construction of these new schools that will be used exclusively by new residents moving into the district. So that's the core of the bill, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
I do have one question real quick. This really only affects Forsyth County, correct?
The enabling legislation,
The
that is
enabling.
correct.
Tell us a little bit, and I know you're going to talk about the constitutional amendment, but the constitutional amendment is for everyone, correct?
Correct. The constitutional amendment.
Because that's the calls I've gotten, is that this is not just for Forsyth County. Because of if we pass the constitutional amendment, it opens up to everybody. Is that correct?
Well, if you pass a constitutional amendment, it does nothing without enabling legislation. And the enabling legislation is the legislation that we have before us that does restrict it to high-growth districts.
Okay. Question? What, Mike? Seven.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know, when you look at your data for the $250 million expenditure, I'm curious, what years did you look at that? I mean, I'm thinking one of the fastest growing school systems in the state is Jackson County in my district, me and Senator Hatchett. And I would think that they would have easily met the requirements here. The 2% a year growth, they far blow that out. And then the $250 million, they built several new schools in the last couple of years. And I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, we need to go pull our data on that county and see what the exact number was. You may have quicker access to that than I did. But when we pulled the data, it was, and I'm amenable to the metrics, what the metrics are. If we think 20% needs to change, if we think the 250 needs to change, I'm happy to put that on the table.
I'm supportive of the bill. One of the things that, for me, I'm kind of curious. I said, what's the downside of you're saying, well, it just applies to Forsyth County, but what's the downside of letting it, where the range is applying to more schools, more districts?
Yeah, I think the opposition that you'll hear this morning is from the home builders, and what their position is going to be as well. This is going to affect housing affordability. This is just passed through to the buyer. What I would point to a couple data points on that I think that would call that into question. The price per square foot between Forsyth, Cherokee, and Dawson County does not vary significantly, and you have varying impact fees across those three municipalities. Forsyth County actually this year changed their road impact fee, and you did not see it increased, and you did not see a sudden increase in new home prices. So I think that it certainly can be argued that some percentage of that is passed on to the new homeowner, but here's the core of the argument for me. You need to argue, from my perspective, why I need to be paying to build new schools for the new neighborhood that's going in down the street. And I think that's what's happening today. And we can kind of get into the nuts and bolts of that. But, I understand what the other side's argument is. I just don't know that plays out in the real world.
And I know Senator Huffstetler, they had passed out to many of us the situation on where fund balances have gone for schools. Jackson County has not had an increase in their fund balance in all of the history of that. They're suffering because of the load of building those new schools, and it's very difficult for them.
Are they paying cash for that, or are they doing it with bond debt, or both?
They're trying to pay as they go, and it's just eating them alive.
Okay. Senator Watson, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing this bill. Just help me understand the financing here. The eSPLOST, where does that play a role here?
It would depend on the municipality, but eSPLOST is a funding mechanism for capital projects.
I mean, 'cause
For
I think
school
that's what we
systems.
do in our counties, all 3 counties, is eSPLOST.
Sure. eSPLOST, that's a cost borne by everyone, those that live in the county and those do not. So depending on what your commercial what your commercial activity is would determine that. eSPLOST, bond debt, even capital reserves are all sources of funding for
So
new
bond debt's going
construction.
to be just on the landowners, right?
bond debt we pass on to property, correct, property tax.
Property owners, and eSPLOST is going to be the sales tax, and then the
Correct.
reserves you're talking about. So,
Reserves will be property tax as well.
exactly, that's the way I understand. So does Forsyth not have eSPLOST?
We do.
You do? And does that not cover the?
No.
it
We
is-
have had hundreds of millions of bond debt that we have had to take on due to the rapid expansion of our system.
It's grown that much, gotcha. Let me ask you this now, is so the property owners, do all property owners pay, and is there an age, or I know that some counties have pushed for, 65 and older, or that kind of thing.
Correct, yeah, we have a 65 and older exemption in the county that passed, I believe, in the year 2000. We also put a floating homestead in place at the local level for schools that is close to 581, but actually has a fixed 4% cap, and the district is currently discussing whether to adopt 581 in addition to that or not. But yes,
How much does the 65 and older cost you?
I don't know the exact number, but it's I believe it's around $20 million a year of their $700 million or so budget. But I don't quote me on that figure. I'm reaching back in my archives for that.
Okay. Senator Summers, number 8.
Thank you, Chairman Dozo. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following up on Chairman Watson's question there, would there be an age, if this were to pass, would you have an age restriction, like if you're 60 or 65 years or older, that person moving to your county would be exempt from this right here?
The local municipality would have the option on housing types of varying impact fees that they can levy. So when it comes to roads, for example, they have a different category for a different price range that you really have to do in the study because the impact is determined to be different. For multifamily, they actually even have mobile homes in that category as well. So that really comes down to what the impact fee study would dictate. And then they can do whatever carve-outs and exemptions they want. So in Forsyth County, for example, they want to encourage commercial development because the schools are the magnet. And so we have like tremendous residential growth. 85% of our tax base is residential. And so they exempted commercial development, for example, from the road impact fees altogether. And the locals have the decision on how to do that.
In regards to a cost or an impact fee on an average what's an average selling price, 500,000 up there?
No, closer to probably 700.
What would an impact fee cost that person building a new house, or an impact fee a school could levy as a number-wise, 20,000, 40,000?
No. Our road impact fee up until last year was $1,900. Our library impact fee is minimal. I think the total impact fees were sub $3,000. I think that you would have probably a couple few $1,000 school
Do
impact
you
fees.
think it would be a prudent, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think it'd be a prudent measure to put like a limit that the homeowner could be charged on this, so it doesn't become a runaway?
The limit already exists such that that by statute, you can only charge what the pro rata share is for the expense of the new development. So let's just say that the 10-year plan for school construction said it's going to be a $300 million allotment that we see moving forward. And we think that that 20% of the burden is going to be the result of new development. They then take the total number of homes they project for the upcoming 10-year period, which for us would be probably 30,000 homes, because we're growing at about 3,000 to 4,000 new homes a year. They would divide that expense out among that, and then that would be the cap. So they can always levy lower than that, but there is a fixed cap already in the statute. it's not a fixed dollar amount, but it is fixed by what the study determines.
And right now, Mr. Chairman, right now, it only applies basically to Forsyth County, where Senator again said it wouldn't apply to his community.
That's my understanding. If we need to change the metrics such as that remains the case, I'm more than willing to look into doing that. That was the intent of the legislation. Now, I will say, since the bill was dropped last year, I've had a few other members say what Senator Guinness said. Well, we're getting killed too. We would like to, be able to have this conversation. So there's two questions I think for me, if I'm in your seats, that I think I have to ask. One, how do I justify charging impact fees for roads, libraries, park and rec, and emergency services, but not schools? It's a gaping hole. Intellectually, it doesn't make any sense. And then secondly, what is the more fair form of taxation? A direct pro rata share where I tie the activity that is placing the demand on the infrastructure and their fee for use of that infrastructure, or taxing the person who's lived there for 20 years to pay for the expansion of infrastructure that they have nothing to do with.
You got another question? Okay. Go ahead and finish up.
I was trying to think the impact of House Bill 581 in your area if they adopt it, city and counties adopt 581 to lower the property taxes. But this right here would maybe eat up what the property taxes would be lowered by.
So the property taxes, I don't think by 581 are ever lowered. It is just a throttle on how much they can increase. And we, like a lot of areas, have seen rapid. I actually moved into my current house in 2019, and we do not have a floating homestead exemption for schools. My property taxes are up about 50% in that amount of time. The reserves, as Chairman Huffsett likes to talk about, the reserves have gone from 65 million to 172 million. They're largely using those reserves, though, to pay for these capital projects because the last few new schools they built, rather than doing bond debt, they have used existing capital.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Senator Dixon, what is that, 12?
Yes, sir. So the impact fee, it's a one-time fee, correct?
That's correct. It's levied at the time of
Tied
new
to the
construction.
development?
Correct.
Okay, so
Yep.
it's not like a property tax that's annual?
That's correct.
And then you said the average home sale price about $750,
Correct.
and that would
Plus or
equate
minus.
to about $2,000?
I don't know what the exact number will be because that would depend on the capital expenditure. I'm just telling you what the other impact fees are
Okay.
in the county.
Thank you.
And we are spending a pretty similar amount on roads. Actually, probably spend more on roads, to be honest with you, than we do on new school infrastructure.
Senator Mallon?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Dolezal, it's not true that when you talk about East Bloss, with my current role in community revitalization and as a nonprofit developer, we face this hurdle with East Bloss because East Bloss is limited to the projects on the list. It does not allow school districts to collect over what they put on the approved project list. There's usually a 5 or 6 year collection period in which the only schools that can be built are the ones that have been approved on that referendum. So if your growth is outpacing what you put on the East Bloss and there's a cap on how much a district can collect, is it not then true that they have to use their reserves to even cover the cost of inflation for many of those schools that were on the list where they don't have access to cover, where school came in at 50 million, that school is now at 100 million?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would also add to this that what's interesting is all of the other impact fees that we talk about that are currently levied flow out of the county's M&O budget. And the county actually has control of how much they grow. The school system is downstream of county or city decisions. They have no control over that, but they have a constitutionally mandated requirement to pay for it. And so, whereas the county has the ability to say we're gonna change the way that we're approving based on, basically the ability of public facilities to accommodate that growth, the school system is at the mercy of the local governments, but then they have to come up with mechanisms to pay for it.
Okay. Any other questions before I open it up to, we've got 7 speakers that have signed up. Any other questions? Senator Watson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I know we've got the constitutional amendment as well, but if we were to pass both of these, it would only apply to Forsyth County at current time, but would later on any of us be able to change the enabling legislation to qualify for a different growth?
Yes, any
level
future
or-
General Assembly could do a couple different things. They could pass a constitutional amendment to peel this back altogether if they wanted to, or they could pass, they could change the enabling legislation as well. So that's probably a concern that you'll hear from some of my friends behind me. I would say that I would point out the fact that the Development Impact Fee Act has largely remained untouched for the 32 years that it's been in place. And so there's not a lot of activity around, there has not been a lot of activity around the legislation we've had in the books for 3 decades now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? What is that? What, Mike? Number 2? Senator?
Thank you, Senator. A question on the current impact fee structure. Right now, Forsyth County utilizes it for roads, Parks and Rec, libraries, EMS. Is that also a one-time impact fee for new construction?
Yes, sir. Impact fees can only be levied at the time of permit. And it's a
At the
one-time
time of
fee.
permit?
Correct.
For new construction only, and
Correct.
it's a one-time fee, is that correct?
That's correct. That's the way that all impact fees work under
Sure.
the existing statute.
Just
and the way this
verify-
is.
And currently, the impact fees in Forsyth County are roughly $2,000?
The road impact fees were $1,900 up until, I believe, actually a month or 2 ago. And they have increased, I'm not sure, they increased significantly. I think that they went up to 4 or 5. I don't know the exact number that those are at. I know the other ones are in the hundreds of dollars. I believe all the other ones are sub $1,000.
But the road impact fees doubled,
They actually,
essentially.
yeah, or perhaps even a little bit more than
a little
double.
more than
yes.
that. And if Forsyth were to utilize this for schools, for education, would that scenario be an option for
Yes.
Forsyth?
So what they did was they have a new transportation plan, and they redid their study, and they looked forward. I believe it's 10 years. And they said, here's the amount of money that we're going to spend on new road construction. They reran the calculations. They had what their pro rata share was, and I don't know if they applied the max or below that like they had before. They're currently, I think, still in discussions on what to do about commercial development. But this is something that you'll see revisited, and you can see these go up or down based on what basically the transportation plan is, the school plan is. If they're going to build new libraries or fire stations, that might get factored in as well.
I would say that most school systems are contracting as opposed to expanding. So we have situations in unique areas, Forsyth, Jackson, maybe in my area, Columbia County, where there is a dramatic need to enhance infrastructure. In probably 140 or more of Georgia counties, that's not a issue for them.
Sure. Yeah.
I got one final question, then we're going to open it up to the comments from the public. If I go and have an addition to my home, $25,000 addition to my home, do I pay an impact fee on that
No.
addition? When I get that permit, I don't pay an
Correct.
impact fee on that? No.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions before I open it up? Chairman Dolezal, would you mind staying here while we take some public comment? Or do
Sure.
you have another meeting? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm at the pleasure of the committee. We'll sit here as
All
long
right,
as you
well,
have me.
we're going to take some public comment, and I'll give you an opportunity to wrap up. Tony West, Americans for Prosperity, are you here? Tony West? If you go up to the podium, and if you could limit it to 3 minutes or less. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I was actually here to speak on SB 28. Is this the proper time, or should I wait for that?
No, we've decided to table that. The Lieutenant Governor's office, along with Chairman Dolezal, is working on a committee sub, and it's going to substantially change the bill. So I don't even think we want to talk about it until he's ready with a new committee sub.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if you could come back, because that is an important bill. It's it's kind of our Doge, if you will. We're going to cut back on regulations and cut back on government, and I appreciate Chairman Dolezal bringing that. So if you will, come back in the next week or so when we have that committee sub.
Of course.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is just looking ahead to our discussion. Do we have an official Senate pronunciation of DOG? Because I know that varies nationally from state to state, and if we're streamlining it, if we're aligning it with the federal government, I'm just curious what the pronunciation is.
That's up to Senator Dolezal, Chairman Dolezal. All right, we're going to go to Stephanie Tanner. Are you here for? Yeah, I see most you are here for 28, but this is 38. Stephanie.
Yes, I'm here
Okay.
for SB 38.
All right.
So thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman Beach. Thank you, Senator Dolezal, for bringing SB 38 forward today. My name is Stephanie Tanner with the Georgia School Boards Association, representing members from all 180 public school districts in the state. And as you all know, Georgia has been the #1 state to do business for 11 years in a row. And with strong economic development comes growth. We know growth can be good, but that communities need the appropriate resources to respond to it. And that's why our members brought us a legislative position in support of development impact fees. You also heard from Senator Dolezal that cities and counties can already do this. So our members are looking forward to the discussion and the prospects of paving the way for high-growth school districts to be able to use development impact fees for educational facilities. And I appreciate y'all's time today, and I am open to questions. Hopefully I can answer them.
Okay. Thank you for your comments.
Okay.
We've got Austin Hackney, Home Builders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Austin Hackney, here representing the Home Builders Association of Georgia, and happy to be here to represent our home builder and real estate industry members and their home buying customers. So I've got 3 main points to make with you this morning to express our opposition to new impact fees that don't exist today that would exist tomorrow if these bills passed. So the first, as has been mentioned, is about housing affordability. I think everyone in the room knows that Georgia has been in an affordability crisis following the COVID-19 pandemic, and that probably started a good period of time before that. But just for context, today, Georgia ranks last in the Southeast for home ownership. And I don't think that's a marker that any of us wants to continue at 66.1%. I can also tell you that statewide, the median price for a new construction home is currently $436,000 and change. At that price, 73% of Georgia households cannot afford to purchase a median-priced house. For every $1,000 increase in the price of a home, an additional 4,687 households cannot afford that house who could have before that increase occurred. And for affordability, I know the impact fee law as it exists today requires that pro rata share to be calculated, usually by a consultant that's been hired by the community or the local government that's going to levy these impact fees. And so we don't have a number to discuss today for what the school board impact fee might be. But for example, in York County, South Carolina, across the state line, they have instituted a school board impact fee at $18,158 per single family home. When they combine that with their city impact fees, that comes to a total of $21,854 per single family home. In government fees, the Supreme Court decided last year have to have some pretty specific requirements to make them constitutional. And in their Sheets versus County of El Dorado decision, they found that they have to have an essential nexus to the specific impact, and they have to be roughly proportional to the actual burden created by the development to stay constitutional. They also find that they can't unfairly target specific groups like new home buyers. So with no real way to measure the new students per house without making a guess, we think that would fail some of the constitutionality tests for development impact fees. So I'll conclude with this. I think the budgets that school boards require to build new schools is an important factor that you have to consider. Right now, school boards can use, as we discussed, eSPLOS, bonded debt, or cash reserves. And so from the Forsyth County School Board's website, They are the only school in the state to receive an 8-year consecutive 5 out of 5-star financial efficiency rating. They are AAA rated by both Moody's and Standard & Poor's for their bonds. They receive almost half of their funding from the state and federal government, and decided last year to decrease their millage rate by 2 full mills. They also exempt seniors over 65 from property taxes to what they say is a cost of $60 million a year. And last year they decided to increase their impact fees for single-family houses up to about $7,000 per unit without the school board impact fees. So my request to you would be to oppose a new fee on new home buyers. I would have much rather been in this committee today supporting a red tape rollback that takes fees and financial burdens off of small businesses like what we're talking about today. And happy to answer any questions about how this change in our state's constitution might affect the home buyers moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Hackney. All right, we have one final on this bill, and that's Hayden Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And then that's I think the other folks that signed up were for Senate Bill 28, correct? Mac and everybody? Okay.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Hayden Stanley. I have the honor of representing the Apartment Association, and I appreciate the years and years of conversations that sponsor Dolezal and I have had on this very issue. I would like to first of all say to you that I agree with, and our client agrees with everything that Mr. Hackney presented to you. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the disparity between what happens to Georgians who rent their home and those who purchase their home. While this is a one-time development fee on new housing or new commercial, it goes away once a family buys a home, they move into the community, they're protected by homestead exemptions. If you're 65 and older, as we've talked about, in Forsyth County, you're exempt. Last year, this legislature passed legislation to cap or to provide local government with the opportunity to cap homesteaded properties. All of that serves to shift those tax obligations to those who rent their homes and commercial properties. They're not protected by senior exemptions. They're not protected by homestead exemptions. So year after year, those who create rental housing for Georgians who choose to live in rental housing will pay this new tax, this new impact fee for education, whatever it is, and that won't be the end of the story. It will continue year after year after year as they're absorbing all of these exemptions that their co-citizens receive. So I'd ask you to keep that in mind. This might be a one-pop deal on a development, but it's not a one-pop deal on those who choose to rent their homes. And I know that because these have not existed purposely, it wasn't included in 1992, and we've talked about it in this legislature for at least 8 sessions. It gets further every year, having been voted down on the floor of the House last year. But what we do know, and what you know when you receive your ad valorem property tax bill every year, that about 1/3 of that cost goes to your county, and about 2/3 goes to school taxes. So using that as a possible guidepost, these are not going to be insignificant. Thank you for the time. Our client would ask you to continue to carefully consider this, and also, you know as well as I that this will last in one county only until the ink dries, and then it'll change again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stanley. That's all the speakers we have signed up before I close out to the public, is there anybody that didn't sign up that would like to speak that came in late? Always like to be fair. Okay. Chairman Dolezal, do you have any final comments before we adjourn?
I think we've covered the bulk of it. What's interesting, one intellectual disconnect in the arguments that were made is Georgia has the highest affordability problem in the Southeast, yet we don't charge these fees. But here's the other states that charge these fees that don't seemingly have the same affordability problem. So perhaps what the issue is that part of the affordability problem comes due to the fact that the home builder profits are far, far, far outpacing other industries. And I'll give you stock performance since summer of last year. The S&P 500 was up 2.53%. The share price of Pulte is up 17.3%. The share price of Lennar is up 20%. The share price of Toll Brothers is up 22%. And the share price of D.R. Horton is up 32%. All of these are the predominant home builders in Forsyth County. So if they share my concern about housing affordability, perhaps they should price their houses differently. Now, that might impact their share prices, but I would argue that I would much rather have that conversation. And secondarily to that, I think that we have a regional housing issue. It is not unique to one county. It is not unique to one state. And it is largely linked to the fact that hedge funds and private equity are gobbling up single-family homes in the state of Georgia and in the Southeast. And I'm actually working on a bill that will look at addressing that problem. But the fastest growing in the county in the state, it's hard to argue that homes there are unaffordable. If they were unaffordable, nobody would be buying them. So somebody is affording them. So there is a direct nexus. John talked about or I think Austin might talk about the nexus piece. That is what I like about this, is there is a nexus to the activity. It literally is the only tax that I know of that we say you must study the direct impact. You can only charge the pro rata share. You have to use it in the area it was collected. You have to use it for the purpose which it was collected. And if you don't use it in that amount of time, you have to return it. Show me another tax that we do that with. So with that, Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any other questions, but certainly appreciate the conversation with you and my friends on the other side of this as well.
We're not taking action today, but I do appreciate you coming and explaining this and having some dialogue on it. I know, Senator McLaurin, you have a question. What do you, number 10?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I find your presentation compelling, especially the part about federal issues relating to the class of buyers for real estate. I mean, that's a real issue, and I know that there's folks at the state level who are trying to think about how we can be more ingenious in addressing who's buying up a lot of the housing stock. My main thing is I just want to know if I can clip you on the profits and share prices so I can use it for tort reform for the insurance companies. If you'll let me do that, I think that was a very compelling presentation just the way you did
Would
it.
you like to transition to a Dolezal morning update perhaps one morning in a personal
You know, nobody's offered us a buyout yet on the brand, but
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Any final questions? Yes, sir. Number 5.
The constitutional issue, I had not heard that. Your thoughts on that?
Can you outline what
What he related to?
If the Supreme Court finds this unconstitutional, then it's going to find it unconstitutional for all impact fees in all the states that charge them, including 2 of our neighboring states they mentioned, South Carolina and Florida. So I don't know how to respond to that other than if it's found to be unconstitutional, then it is, but it has not been. So we can speculate on that. But these laws have been in existence in other states literally for decades.
Gotcha. Okay. And the percentage, I maybe should have asked Hayden this, Mr. Stanley, the percentage of homes that are rented, because I have constituents and patients and employees that have owned homes and have moved, and they such a hassle to own the home, they've chosen to rent. And I don't know the percentage of rental homes in the relating to home ownership. And
I don't know. I'll find that information and share it with you in the committee. But you're right, more and more Georgians are waking up to the fact that being home poor, the myth of home ownership is is that accurate? The impact fee would apply to every new renter, or?
I think what the argument that he's making is that when we have things like the floating homestead exemption that caps the growth of taxes on homeowners, those same benefits do not apply to commercial property owners, of which apartment complexes are one of. So I've seen that in my office building for my complex, whereas I have a floating homestead exemption in place for my county M&O taxes. I don't have that in place for my commercial. So my commercial property taxes are rising at a higher rate. I think he's talking about that more as a side effect of 581 than he is to the impact fees. I would tie that back, though, to what Austin talked about, and we have had rollbacks. So we've had rapidly rising assessment prices, which drives the tax up, and then a number of school districts have done rollbacks, and the rollbacks apply to commercial and residential. So what Austin's talking about actually helps Hayden's clients and what he's talking about.
Okay. Any final questions? Yeah. What number? Senator Hodge?
Thank you, Chairman Dolezal. I find your argument on usage fees very compelling. My question is, do you have any feelings about taking this concept even further? If we can do this for education, what about public safety? What about health care?
Well,
Does this open the floodgate to do that?
we don't have, the public safety thing, I would say, is more so, would not be a usage fee that you would need to, well, I would say one of two things. One, we already have impact fee availability for public safety. So there is the recognition that at least for the capital expenditure, that if you are going to, that new development is going to place a demand on that new infrastructure such that new development should pay their pro rata share. We do see this with our managed lanes on roads, that we are moving towards more of that to where it's pay for use for certain lanes and on the roads, and we're, a number of states have done that for a long, long time. Georgia is now looking at that as a way to fund the ever-increasing cost of new road infrastructure. So I guess your answer to public safety is we already do have that in the form of impact fees. I forget what your second one was. Healthcare, we don't have that in impact fees for healthcare, nor do I know of a lot of government expenditure for capital expenditure for new construction of healthcare facilities.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. I want to thank the committee for being here at 8 in the morning. Appreciate it. And Chairman,
Is this your longest committee meeting, Mr. Chairman?
This was quite a lengthy one for BLB. I got to be honest with you. So we're adjourned. Thank you.
That's a long meeting.
Great job.